Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2024. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with hybrid hexagon twists. On the 10th day of Advent of Tess, we're folding this pattern that I designed called Spokes, which is an expanded version of the open triangle stars gapped pattern that I taught in the 2022 version of Advent of Tess. Now, having it expanded further out makes it a lot easier to fold, and you'll see that it's almost identical to yesterday's pattern, except that the rhombus twists are on the opposite side of the paper. So let's go ahead and start folding. I'm using a 24-fold triangle grid on a hexagon, so 24 divisions from the top to the bottom. If you're not sure how to make this grid, check out the welcome video. And if you're not signed up yet for email reminders, definitely sign up at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent so you can see the full tutorial for this grid and also get the crease pattern for today's tessellation design. So we're starting with a closed hexagon twist in the center, which means that our mountain folds for all 6 of our pleats are going straight out to the corners of the paper. And on the right-hand corner, the valley fold is going to be 1 spacing above that mountain. So I'm going to fold both the mountain and the valley, and then pass that off to my left hand, holding it down on the table, and then fold the next pleat and the next. Often when I see people folding closed hexagon twists for the first time, and notice there I reached under to let this area float up, but I kept the rest of the paper on the table. Often the mistake I see when people are folding closed hexagon twists for the first time is that they'll try to fold everything in the air and often try to get all 6 mountain folds in place before they put in the valley folds, which means that when you get to the 6th one, your first 3 have come undone and you need to go around and around and around, and it feels like it will never end. But if you have the mountain and the valley on the table, it's not going anywhere. So now I've brought my pleats in, so I have just 2 grid spacings of pleat lifting up off of my flat surface, and I'm going to bop the top so that my edges don't fold in on themselves when I twist around. Grab 3 sides of my hexagon, so I'm going to bop and grab at the same time and give it a sharp twist while slightly squeezing inwards with my fingers underneath, and then gently massage the paper a little bit to make sure that everything is happy being where it is. And notice that I have my mountain folds going straight all the way until they hit the corner. If you didn't actually twist around, then your mountain folds would be doubling back before they hit the corner. So there's my closed hexagon twist. I'm ironing out the pleats. Once I'm certain that the valley folds underneath stayed on grid lines, aka that my hexagon is nice and happy, and I don't feel any extra layers where I don't expect them. And then I'll add in the open triangle twists. Now, last time we added the open triangle twists in a counterclockwise order. This time we're going to add them in a clockwise order. At least if I remember correctly, that's what we did last time. And they're going to be the same spacing as last time. So 1 space away is the valley, another space for the mountain, and these are open triangles. So we have our 3rd pleat completing this outlining of 1 grid triangle. And when we're putting our tube pleat, so notice this is forming a tube out here. This is opening up the pleat from the hexagon and erasing it so that we can put in our third direction of pleat and squash the new twist. So last time we went counterclockwise so it would be easier to fold the rhombus twist on the same side of the paper. This time we're going clockwise so that it'll be easier to fold the rhombus on the other side of the paper. And it's not like you have to memorize, like, oh, clockwise in this situation, counterclockwise in the other. It's more of a, okay, let me fold two triangles next to each other. And I'm going to go ahead and fold the clockwise one. So I'm working on the next pleat from the hexagon, which is the bottom pleat of my tube. I'm going to have that same spacing of valley one out from the folded mountain, mountain one spacing further. And likewise, this is an open triangle. So as I fold this over, this is opening the pleat coming from the central hexagon. We're leaving the top plate closed. And then keeping that area as an overlap between the two pleats and squash the open triangle. Now here's your test to know if you're going in the right direction for the pattern or the wrong direction. Again, this is a matter of making it easier to open the overlap and not a matter of exactly right or wrong. It's not like you can't do it the other way. But let's say I wanted to put my next twist on the same side. If I went to open this overlap, I would need to pop and pop out from under. But if I go and to open this overlap on the other side, it's open, open, no popping. So it's going to be easier to open on this side of the paper. And that's what I'm going for with this order of the triangle twists. If I went the other direction, then these two pleats would have been put in the opposite order, and it would open easily on this side and harder on the other side. So rotating around, I'm going to continue working clockwise on these open triangle twists. And setting up my tube pleat, opening the pleat coming from the hexagon, the bottom of the tube, while leaving the top of the tube closed, and finding my third grid line around that target grid triangle for my new open triangle twist, and squash the new twist. And rotate, and I'll do it this time without drawing. I'm finding the tube, opening the pleat from the hexagon, finding the grid line that's outlining my target triangle, folding through the existing pleat, and squashing my new open triangle twist. Once again, find my tube, open the pleat from the hexagon back until I find my target triangle, run that pleat all the way to the edge of the paper, making sure my valley is further out from the target triangle than the mountain, and squash. And rotate, and we're going to do almost exactly the same thing, except this time we're going to do a compound wrap down here. And I know I've shown this in 2 of the tutorials already in Advent of Tess. This time I'm going to show it from the perspective of setting up the compound wrap first, and then the twist that I'm going to have in the center. So these folds are from my tube pleat relative to this pleat coming from the central hexagon. And what I'm going to do is open the pleat coming from my first triangle and pop the mountain down at the valley. And while I'm at it, I'm going to emphasize both the valley and the mountain folds as they continue on up into there. You'll notice that I have the start of a three-way intersection of mountains here, and I want to encourage that and bring up that point down below. So notice I had this situation here, and I'll mark in red the point I'm bringing up, and in blue the point I'm making sure stays down. And I'm lifting that point in red up and letting this mountain zigzag, and the valley is forming a parallel zigzag underneath. And we get continuation of the pleat in the same direction, and it's actually on the same grid lines. It just had a flip from mountain, one spacing valley, back to mountain, valley, one spacing mountain, back to valley. And we're letting that all fold up, and then we can identify the grid line for our third pleat of the open triangle, fold that through like normal, and squash. So you'll notice when I'm doing these compound wraps, I'm only doing them on the sixth overlap caused by triangles. I'm not changing all of the rest of the overlaps into compound wraps. I'm not making the other overlaps compound wraps in the first place. I'm just doing it on this one because it would have been in the opposite pleat order. So then, grabbing that compound wrap as I flip the paper over, I'm going to go ahead and start with the compound wrap for folding our closed rhombus twists on this side, because it has a special property. And that property is that the mountain folds, all four of these mountain folds, are going to stay on the same grid lines. I'm just going to take this point that's sunken down in and pop it up. So I'm pushing from the back side, popping it up, keeping all of my mountain folds, and then for these two pleats on the outside, the valley folds will hop to the opposite side of the mountains, and we're able to squash our twist. So that's a pretty easy way to find a rhombus twist, but it does put a little bit more stress on the paper to be popping it through. From here, all 5 other overlaps are identical, so the same steps that apply to this overlap apply to all the rest. And it's the same exact steps that we saw in yesterday's pattern, where we have this friendly pleat overlap that we're going to open, and these pleats are coming together at a 60-degree angle. The pleat on top, where it's coming together at a 60-degree angle, is going to be the through line, the grid line that continues straight through the twist, while the pleat on the bottom of that 60-degree angle is going to jump over one grid spacing, and then we'll be able to set up the remainder of our twist. So once again, as we're opening this up, I'm opening, and this grid triangle sitting right underneath the intersection, and this grid triangle sitting right on top. Notice it's this one, not this one, in this 120-degree corner. Those two triangles are the central diamond of my closed rhombus twist. And squash. So that's a good thing to mark if you're having trouble identifying these rhombus twists. So if I were to have this situation laying flat, it's a friendly overlap, and I go to mark where my pleats are, I can mark this side of the central diamond, and that tells me this open side is going to be the through line, and I need to match the mountain folds on opposite sides of the central diamond and set up my pleats. So one common mistake I see with these rhombus twists is trying to put pleats in different directions than the rhombus directions. We always want to see an X of our pleats coming out of a rhombus twist. Of course, sometimes we can't really see the pleats out of some corners, which we'll get into in tomorrow's pattern, but that's a good indicator that you have the correct pleat directions, especially because these two are fixed in place and we're never going to move them. So then we need the one that carries on the same grid line and the one that jumps one over, and specifically it's one back towards the triangle. So this mountain makes contact, it jumps back one towards the triangle and then continues in the same grid direction. And then squash, and one more at full speed. So these can be really fast to fold once you've folded quite a few and have kind of the image of the twist in your mind as you're folding. So that's spokes, a very quick day for Advent of Tess today. And if you'd like to see how this pattern repeats on a larger grid on 64 divisions, you can see that in the Crease Pattern ebook for Advent of Tess this year at gatheringfolds.com. And you'll also see there some alternative options for getting this pattern to repeat. So here we saw the hexagon and triangle on the same side with the rhombus on the opposite side. Tomorrow we're going to be seeing the hexagon and rhombus on the same side with the triangle on the opposite side. And while we're on today's, don't forget to post to Instagram or Facebook or wherever else you like to post photos, like my Discord server, and tag me at Gathering Folds so I can share what you posted with everyone else. And do use hashtag Advent of Tess or Advent of Tess 24 to help everyone to see what you folded. So happy folding, everyone, and have a great day. See you tomorrow.